Alright, we've kind of been trekking through the shit lately in the webcomic relief, and coming off of the last video where we covered an animal fucking failed politician with a conjoinment fetish who's now into cryptocurrency.
That is a sentence and a half.
I figured we could do with a good comic. So I looked through my list of comics and landed on a comic that has been suggested to me a bunch of times. I originally distanced myself a little from it because I thought it was another webtoon comic and I kinda wanted to spread myself out a little. But nope, it's like any other webcomic, and by that I mean it's unlike any other webcomic I've read, and it's called Kill 6 Billion Demons.
Hello! That's honestly like the strongest title for a comic I have ever heard.
Kill 6 Billion Demons is a fantasy comic written and illustrated by Tom Parkinson Morgan under the alias Abaddon. The comic began as a choose your own adventure thread on the MS Paint Adventures discussion forum in 2012. Tom converted it into a standalone webcomic in 2013, and Image Comics began publishing print compilations in 2016. Since then, the comic has been widely praised for its creativity, its originality, and its massive scope.
So, is the comic as good as they say? Let's dive in and find out.
Meet Allison Roof, a young girl from California who by page 3 gets approached by a demonic looking figure that embeds her forehead with a key looking thing. No sooner has the demon shown up before a portal opens up and an army of other demonic looking things tries to steal Allison away. Allison is however transported into some magical world and with a now glowing pearl in the middle of her forehead.
All of this takes place in just the first 10 pages of the comic.
So, holy shit, what a beginning to a comic. Immediately you're interested and hooked as to what's going on, but I think maybe Tom went a little too far in some places. I'm all for getting thrown straight into the action, but for the longest time I thought Allison was just some kind of rando and we were gonna see many other people being attacked by demons. Because the way we're introduced to her in bed, awkwardly about to lose her virginity to a typical Chad looking guy, seemed kinda comedic. And don't get me wrong, Kill 6 Billion Demons is not devoid of humor, and is actually implemented rather well throughout the entire comic. But here at the beginning, it was kinda so stereotypical that I honestly didn't know this was going to have any big agency. But it was, and now Allison is finding herself in a strange world where she can't understand anyone and everything, and I do mean everything, is alien and confusing.
If there's one thing you cannot take away from Tom, it's his insane creativity.
And there's also a clear understanding of how writing works in this comic. For example, by having Allison not understanding anyone, their dialogue is in weird letters you'd never seen before. So you are in the same situation as Allison, being horribly confused, which kinda makes me wonder how she's able to understand the first side character of the comic throws her way, White Chain. Even White Chain asks about this, to which neither of them have any answers. Anyway, small nitpick aside, Allison of course wants to get back to her world while White Chain wants some answers. Fortunately for Allison, these two are not mutually exclusive and the adventure can begin.
I obviously don't want to give it all away, but trust me when I say you have never seen anything quite like this comic. Until you have. Don't worry, that'll make more sense later.
Even when the world is so unique and different, the plot itself also finds new and exciting ways to be different. The story kinda sets up these big evil bosses and kinda strongly implies that Allison has to go and kill those, and I think most people would then assume she'd go and do just that, and kinda focus on the adventure happening during this murderous adventure. The problem is that that's already been done before, and Tom wishes to keep every chapter fresh. So when you at one point might have a horror-esque dinner party, the next you'll have a straight up heist or a drinking battle. The comic is all over the place, and normally I'd say that was a bad thing, but with the comic as it is and how it kinda keeps reflecting the different areas and people that Allison crosses paths with, I'd actually say it works in this comic's favor. Now, however, probably comes the time where we need to tackle the elephant in the room, which is that many of you will probably pick up on the fact that all of the stuff I mentioned thus far has a disturbing lack of killing demons. which is kinda odd when the comic itself is called Kill 6 Billion Demons. I mean, there's a kinda huge leap from killing 6 billion demons to not really killing a single one. Oh, well, she does kill some, but it's rather minimal, and she's even often the voice of reason that is lambasting the other demons around her for their merciless killing. Heck, one of the main antagonists she faces later on is identified by his remorseless killing of both friends and foes.
The title is strong. Heck, it might just be the strongest title of any comic I have ever covered. But it's a little misleading.
A thing I adore though, and I don't know if it's on purpose or not, is that Tom wears his inspirations on his sleeve sometimes, and because of a lot of his inspiration is video games, I found myself many times smirking to myself, knowing exactly where he got the inspiration. And I was even more happy to see it was from good games, such as having a character wear a shirt that says Kill Boss, which I like to think is a reference from the wildly underappreciated game Ruiner. But there was also a time where I felt the inspiration became a little much. Like where it kind of went from inspiration to kind of dancing on the edge of ripping it off a little maybe. There's a point where Amocin and some guys enters a hidden area used as a place for safekeeping unholy abominations to kill off something. But it's stopped by some protector who is branding a huge polearm and says, and I quote, "This is a peaceful land, its inhabitants are kind, we have no room for thee."
This land is peaceful, its inhabitants kind, but thou dost not belong.
I mean, kudos for good taste, but a little blatant, perhaps? Be that as it may, I think Dark Souls actually works great as a comparison tool for Kill 6 Billion Demons. They speak the same ye olde English, which I will admit I was a little miffed about, but it kinda grew on me, especially cause it wasn't obtuse like Mini-Mandy. It was kinda small things like, instead of telling people to leave, they'd be like, "Be gone, fuck!" It kinda feels fantastical like Dark Souls as well, which is one of the things I love the most about the two. You know how in old fables something ludicrous happens and you're just meant to believe it as if it was the most normal thing in the world? Like how in Norse mythology the first being, Ymir, was a giant who was made from the drops of water that formed from the ice of Niflheim when it met the heat of Muspelheim. Kill 6 Billion Demons has the same thing, where things just happen because fuck you, that's how magic works in this world, and we don't have to explain shit. But there's also a hard line in this. The stuff that the average Joe deals with, that stuff all has meaning, rules and borders. But then you deal with the literal gods and they, just do stuff. Like Jim over there just created 2 suns. Why? Fuck it, he was cold and it was dark, stop asking questions.
Have you ever been so extra you just, created another sun?
There's really no shortage of how fantastical this comic is. So much so that underneath the pages of almost every strip, you'll find some piece of text that's typically written almost like an item description in the Soulspawn series that helps giving some extra insight into the world. Sometimes it relates to what's going on in the strips, sometimes it doesn't, but every time it's some of the most metal and or fantastical shit you've ever heard. Like, just listen to this.
A conquering king must come with violence in his self of selves. He must splay the guts of his enemy with no weapon but his heartstrings. His lips must spit sweet music that pulverizes his enemies, and his eyes must tell a brain-cleaving tale of loveliness. He must quench the sword of his tongue in the love of his enemies. Spasms 3112.
Thank you, Nick, that I totally didn't get to feature in this video just so I could steal some of your subscribers.
All of this leads us to one of my biggest gripes with the comic, however, and that is what I was alluding to before. The comic is great, it's creative, and there's so much stuff you've simply never seen before, and even more so done so perfectly as this comic does it. Which is why it just boggles my goddamn mind why the comic decided to do a fucking tournament arc like your average shonen manga does. Don't get me wrong, the tournament arc is the best arc of any shonen, and anyone who says it's the beach arc can fucking unsubscribe, I don't care. Huh. But yeah, as I said, I don't inherently hate the tournament arc. I mean, I live and breathe fighting games. It'd be weird if I didn't like it. But it's so typical and tropey. Like, okay, I'm gonna go on one of my many tangents here, but when I was a dumb weeb, tried to read Tokyo Ghoul. And at first I was like, this is pretty interesting. Dealing with the intricate details about how this vampire race has found itself in this modern society and how this protagonist has to find himself cast out by both of these societies and yet still try and fit into both. It was an interesting, albeit kinda immature story that had me focusing more on the internal drama that was going on rather than any idea of action. That all flew right out the fucking window when they started talking about how the different vampires had different types of superpowers and different abilities depending on what mutation they had. And then you'd have the vampire hunters who'd all have unique weapons, and those weapons would have unique powers, and all of a sudden this attempt on making a horror thriller comic had just been turned into yet another battle manga. Same thing with a manga I used to love back in the day called Siren, that started out as a mystery horror isekai thing, and suddenly, boom, battle manga. What about the manga Beelzebub? Used to be comedy, and then over time, battle manga. Like, I understand there's a transition, and it can transition into a battle manga, but it's just so typical and almost feels like you're selling out your creativity for the sake of whatever is popular. And that circles us back into Kill 6 Billion Demons. For a comic that dared to be so different, to deal with so many different types of stories in this big adventure, to then pick a fighting tournament almost feels a little lazy. I won't say it's not earned, I just feel it's rather uncreative compared to everything else. Maybe that's just me.
It's like if you take Final Fantasy, a franchise known for its visually interesting set pieces, its flamboyant designs and its exaggerated items, and you then make a game about 3 stereotypical boys doing nothing and just driving around in an actual real car. Oh wait, they did that. Cause Nomura is a fuck.
Another little pet peeve I have with the comic is that at one point there's a time skip. Now, it's actually a pretty significant time skip too, and it kinda came as a big surprise, but a welcome one at first, but then you kinda start to think. Allison goes from kind of an insecure girl from California who's unwise to this new world and who can just barely swing a sword around thanks to magical assistance, to becoming a big, huge buff Amazonian who seems to know this new world like the back of her own hand. Half of the enjoyment of the comic was how well Tom slowly paced out Allison's growth, and we got to see her realistically learning and growing more and more as the comic went on. We saw she was ready to go back into the magical world when she realized her boyfriend was still in there, but we also saw that she wasn't feeling good about it all, but kinda grew into that role. We got to see her becoming too big for her britches due to the key she was given at the beginning of the comic, and what consequences that had. And then suddenly now there's just a time skip, and she's completely found her footing and can wreck everyone's shit. I don't think I'm the only one who enjoyed to see the slow and steady growth of the character, cause we got to see the exact thing that shaped her into who she was becoming. I mean, heck, we even got to see the things that end up giving her the scars she'd later brandish. We got to see her grow before our very eyes, and it was such a slow, methodical, and interesting process that it's such a crying shame to just kinda drop that on the floor and leap forward. There's also the whole thing about how time clearly doesn't just stop in our world when she's in the demon world, and at no point is it brought up what she did about that. Did she drop back home every now and again, or did she just lose that power for good? What are they doing back in the real world? Are they considering Allison and her boyfriend just dead or missing? I mean, Allison didn't even leave them a fucking note.
Hi girlfriends! Off to save my boyfriend who may be captured by what is essentially a god and potentially also kill 6 billion demons! Don't forget to water my cactus while I'm gone, lol. Hashtag typical white girl things.
One last thing, and I'm gonna be choosing my words very, very carefully here. Before I continue, Hi, I'm Risa. I got absolutely nothing against the LGBTQ community in any shape or form. You do you, love whoever you want as long as they're consenting adults. You go do your thing. Okay, with that out of the way, a thing I found both fascinating and was a little worried about is how much this comic about demons, gods, mythical creatures and creations you could never even begin to imagine actually focuses on LGBT matters. Now, at first I figured it was just a one-off thing, but then I saw it again, and again, and again. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, not at all, but at the same time, the critical part of my brain was kinda hesitantly going, but is this the comic to do it in? Like, okay, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having a character that struggles with their gender, but when it's an ephemeral soul that literally only sees the body of flesh as a husk it can inhabit, why does the gender matter? And why, to this otherworldly creature, is there only the same two genders we have in our world? Why is being gay treated as taboo in this world, while murdering things just for looking at you funny hardly makes anyone bat an eyebrow? I really hope you don't think I'm trying to make light of these struggles in the real world, but it just feels like it's a very human thing to put into a world that is so anything but that. Especially when you could kinda do the opposite because of that. Have Allison struggle with these concepts, but show that this is a purely human construct and that these ethereal creatures are above this. To them, same-sex relationships could be the most normal thing in the world, and we as humans could look at that and go, huh, I guess it is pretty silly to make such a big deal out of that, huh?
Holy shit, I'm gonna get ass blasted from here to Timbuktu for saying this.
All in all, the writing of this comic is fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed when it gets going. It's not flawless in any way, but the good greatly outshines the bad. It's a comic that feels like it kinda needs to find its footing at first, both from the writer and the audience. But when it's going strong, and I will definitely keep an eye on this going forward. I would love nothing more to one day sit down with Top and just kinda get an insight in how his brain works. Because there's just so much creativity and unconventional stuff in this comic that breaks all the rules, but somehow works. Perhaps because of that, it's a lot like a experimental music album where every song doesn't hit, but what does just takes you by storm.
But, as good as the writing is, it's got nothing on the art.
10! Alright?
Okay, just barely shy of 10, but we'll get into that. Holy fuck, this comic's art. I don't even know where to start. There's so much to talk about. Okay, I think I got it. I think I got it. Okay. So, do you remember in my Cloud Scratcher review where there's this shot where they first arrive to the cat homeworld and it's really underwhelming? Well, take a look at this! I mean, Jesus Christ, right? Now, you probably think, oh, Rise, that's not fair, you just picked the best out of... Okay, but surely...
There are so many pages like this, it is insane.
Every single goddamn page is bursting with content. And considering that Tom's designs are so unique and different and creative, it is a freaking wonder and a half that he can consistently keep flooding the pages with this creativity. Every location that the team goes to is oozing with charm and personality. So much so that the different characters' clothes and designs often reflect whatever part they're in. Sometimes it's kimonos and yukatas. Sometimes it's hoodies and jackets. Sometimes it's Renaissance dresses and suits. And sometimes it's physical manifestations of our deepest, darkest, most personal fears plucked straight from the darkest corner of your mind. And sometimes it's a cute little imp.
The reason why it works is because the world is chaotic and is supposed to be chaotic. So when you take all these things and just mash them together, It in itself makes it chaotic too.
Way too often you'll find fantasy designs that are just this thing but different, or this thing mixed with that thing. So when you look at this comic and you see this, or this, and it's unlike anything you've ever seen before, that's fucking nuts. I also thoroughly love how this isn't censored. It'll be vile, it'll be graphic, it'll leave everything out in the open, but never use it as a crutch. It's not like movies, games, comics or whatever that's like, yeah, we know we don't got a good story, good characters, good anything, but we got a lot of gore and tits, so go have fun with that!
Be 100% honest with me. Do you really believe anyone would read Rascals if not for all of the cheesecake in it?
The character designs are also really on point. Despite how much is on screen, you are always able to tell which character is which. And that is despite every character will go through different clothes and accessories. I mean, at one point one of the characters gets a hat as big as she is, and despite of this, you can still tell who it is. One of the best things, however, is how the designs tells a story. Whitechain, for example, is the character I was talking about earlier who is struggling with the gender and who they identify as. And when you first see their design, you wouldn't be wrong to think it looks like a guy. But as the story progresses, Whitechain will start dressing more and more feminine. Amocin is probably the one most people will think about when it comes to the design telling a story, as not only will she change her hair color, she'll also change its length, but it'll also do that thing I love where the scars don't disappear and wounds leave a scar. It gives the scars value rather than just covering someone in a ton of them and you have no idea what it means or where it came from.
Obviously not everything has to have meaning, I mean that'd be dumb, but I definitely feel stuff like this is made better for it.
As much as I didn't like the whole idea of having the tournament taking place, even I gotta admit this is where Tom really just brought his A game. I have seen professional manga artists that comes up short compared to the fights of this comic. All the right hits are given the right amount of screen presence. The environment is always showed when it's important, and every attack has that big oomph when it needs to have it. Whether it be from luck or references or what I don't know, but Tom shows a mastery of the craft of making a good action scene. Everything is also shown in a way that naturally leads the eye naturally throughout the comic, making it pure bliss to read it.
Tom's it's just
nice.
Now, I wish it was all sunshine and rainbows, but like I alluded to, there's a few nitpicks, and I do mean nitpicks in this comic's presentation that unfortunately comes along as an extra thing when it's a webcomic, and that is its website. I mean, when you first look at it, it looks just fine, but there's just a lot of small little things that kinda confuse me. Why is there not an actual archive section? Why is that the arguably most important part of the comic reduced to a drop-down menu on the side? And it's even underneath a separate drop-down menu which is all focused around blog posts. Shouldn't the comic, the thing you come here for, be at the top? And when you look at the archive, sure you get all the different chapter names, but it's kinda set up in reverse. Meaning, if you click on where it says book 1, it will take you to the last page of that book, which kinda spoils you for what's gonna happen. Okay, so if this is the end, what if you click in the other end of the chapter? Nope, that brings you to the end as well. Okay, so we take the first bit underneath where it says book 1. After all, it has a 1 there, so surely that must be where you start, right? I mean, kinda. But you then have to navigate down to the bottom again, spoiling yourself for what's to come and click the page 2. Shouldn't it be 1 if I effectively wanna go to the beginning? Okay, so that's the hard way of doing it. Obviously, you can just go to the latest page and click the first page underneath it and boom, you're at the first page. Not all comics have this, so I personally think you're legally pardoned for not immediately going with that. At least I hope so, because I didn't immediately opt for that. But anyway. Now if you want to go to the next page, you can just click on the page and it'll take you to the next one. And that's great. Again, I didn't think to immediately do that because the last comic I covered had me opening the page in a new window. And that one was a horrible fetishist furry shit. So I was kind of scared away from doing that. Alright, let's use the navigation button underneath. But it's also a weird setup of the buttons. Why are chapters the first arrow and the next page is the second? It typically goes next comic, then next chapter, then most recent page. Kinda like how it is on a DVD menu or a cassette tape. I know all these things seem rather trivial, and for all intents and purposes they are, but they just kinda pile on. Why is the archive in reverse? Why is it not at the top? Why is the header buttons kinda pushed to the side rather than being centered? Why is the blog archive thing above the actual comic archive? Why are the navigation buttons in that order? Why does the text of the navigation button also have arrows when the icons above them have the same icons? Why is it that when the buttons doesn't do anything, it's highlighted, but when it does do something, it's toned out? You know, the absolute opposite of what it normally is? I get maybe they wanted to try something different, but user experience is a true and tested thing, and it works for a reason, and kinda necessitates that the visual language is the same among all sides.
Now, is this an incredibly minor point that I have honestly made a way too big deal out of? Absolutely. But I just feel that when the comic is this good, this many small issues just stands out way more.
The great thing about this story is that while the world is so different and is easily the most interesting thing about the comic, the story still allows itself to focus on Allison and her wish for growth. At first she wants nothing more than just to get the key out of her head and return to her world, but as time goes on she slowly matures and her goals change. But it doesn't come painlessly. Just like we people grow and mature by finding out what parts of us work and which don't, so does Allison. She grows, but not without stumbling along the way. At first she doesn't want the key in her head, but then eventually she finds out how powerful the key is and finds out how special that makes her, which goes to her head and she becomes incredibly cocky and self-absorbed.
The cool thing is that it never feels forced. You can always tell why she acts like she does.
Ultimately, Allison is the character that got thrust into this whole thing and wants nothing more than to just be done with it. The comic does a great job in highlighting her roots in our world as well, which often makes it funny when young barista from California is taking on an elder demon from the pits of hell in a drinking contest, and is able to win cause that's what you do in college. I also just like the cute little nudge that her name is Allison, which can be shortened to Alice, which of course makes the comparison to Alice in Wonderland super apparent. It's a nice little nudge to that story, showing Tom is aware of the two and how similar they can be at their core.
See, author of Latex Blue, it's almost like you can do praise to that one author without using it as an excuse to diddling kids.
Next up is White Chain, or rather, their full name is 82 White Chain, born in emptiness, returns to subdue evil. And I thought the protagonist of Tower of God had a weird name. White Chain, as I'll call them, just cause I don't want to end up dying, is an angel and a peacekeeper. Think of them like a cool fantasy monk who'll beat the evil out of you with their bare hands. And yes, that's as cool as it sounds. I swear at one point, they straight up slapped the face off of someone. It's a thing of fucking beauty. Anyway, White Chain is the first friendly person that Allison bumps into in the other world, and White Chain takes it upon themselves to help Allison, however very, very much reluctantly so. However, circumstances change and helping Allison turns out to be a much bigger deal than they both might think. White Chain also ends up growing and changing throughout the story. At first they are very much holier than thou. See, it's funny because they're an angel. And ends up becoming very much more down to earth and humble. White Chain is also, as I said before, struggling with the gender throughout the comic. And while I again question its inclusion in a setting like this, it does also help bring some depth to the character.
Because as cool and kick-ass as White Chain is, their character is a little...
The last character worth talking about that tags up with Amocin is Sio. Okay, fine, her full name is Cioele Estrella von Maximus III. Now, I fucking love Sio. I really do. I think she might be the best character in this entire thing. So before we get into why I love her so much, let's just real quick cover what I don't like. As cool as Sio is, she feels kinda out of place at first. It's kinda hard to explain why, but I'll do my best. The demons in the other world are kinda timeless in interest and behavior. With that I mean, there's the character Oscar, who's the fucking shit by the way. Sure, he dresses in pants with evil printed on it, and there's almost a sort of hip-hop feel to his gang, but as a character he wants to heist and plunder, and he sings things that almost sounds like sea shanties. Like, these are things that were there a long time ago, but are still here to this day. White Chain's pious behavior can also be seen in monks both current and old. And then there's Sio, who writes fanfiction.
Is it just me that feels that doesn't really fit?
That being said, Sio is the best. And she is the best despite being a kleptomaniac and a compulsive liar. A thing long-time viewers will probably be shocked to hear is that I actually loved Sio's dialect too. She speaks in a completely made-up dialect unlike anything I've ever seen before, which in universe is called black speech.
Well, that's that YouTube video demonetized.
And I kinda love how you can tell she's trying to keep it in check, but whenever she's going full black speech, you get full-on translations underneath, which are those funny ones where you can tell they're swearing, cussing, being straight up super hostile, but the translation is super chill and sophisticated. It's almost like that one joke from Kung Pao.
I implore you to reconsider.
Okay.
There are plenty more characters in the comic, but I feel these are the main attractions of the comic. These also feel like the ones that are the most fleshed out and has the most agency. Although we do get to see some other characters and what makes them tick, but I feel talking about that will kinda spoil the comic. There are so many quirky characters that will return every now and again. The villains too are freaking great, and they span everywhere from almost cartoon villainy to tragic to sophisticated and dignified. I also like that all the characters have their own set of rules, and they set up these rules really well, while at the same time stick to those rules. Like, some of the demons in the comic, their power is represented by what color mask they have, and one of the demons that ends up tagging along with Amocin, whose name is, and I'm not making this up, Princess Mamoru Moonshine Jägermeister Jack Daniels Timothy Tim Bill Freddie Mercury Blueberry Luna Esquire, starts out with having a blue mask and is kinda weak and looks like a little imp, but later on they kinda evolve and get a red mask, and no real attention is given to it, cause it's already set the rules up and expect you to keep up with these rules.
The demon also ends up getting their name changed to something less silly, to Princess Jack Moonshine, which I honestly feel is something my friends will write on my tombstone when I die. I really need new friends.
The writing is an 8. What a good ass story. It's unique, different and strange in all the best ways while still being a blast to read. The art is a 9. It's just so fucking good. Rarely to ever do you find something that's so consistently creative while at the same time being so consistently efficient and good with the presentation. It just needs a little more, and it needs to sort out the kinks with the website, then we're talking a big fat 10. The characters are a 7. This one could possibly be subject to change, because it feels like the comic right now is giving the other characters more screen time, which can make them better. but the ones we've gotten to see thus far are great. All in all, this comic is an 8 and it's a must read, and one you can bet your bottom dollar I'm putting in my Hall of Fame. Whether you're into fantasy or not, check this comic out, cause nothing is quite like kill 6 billion demons.
I'll be real with you guys, I honestly didn't feel like I was going to like this comic when I first sat down with it. With how hyped up it was, I honestly felt my expectations were going to be a little too high. And it also sounded like it was going to be my kind of kryptonite with how over-the-top fantasy it was. So I was incredibly pleasantly surprised when I sat down and read it. And I definitely think you should too. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next webcomic relief. Take care.
Let's go! Turn up the issue, I'm dying to give you the problem you practically begging for. Don't waste a minute, I'm instantly in it until my contender is never more. Yes. You came to fight with the wrong one. That's your mistake in the long run. Ain't no advancing, you being canned, so you better break for the dog come. Turn them down when they turn up. Who am I? Better learn up. I would die for the purpose. Anyone coming from mine gotta earn it. If you started, I'ma finish it. Cut them off, I'm the period. You feel like an alpha to meet the omega. Time's up, I'm the end. Let's go! I am the finisher. You started, I finish it. I am the finisher. Soon as you started, I finish it. It's the final call, now your time is up. Game over, this the end of it. Come on! I am the finisher. Soon as you started, I finish it. I am the finisher. I am the finisher. I am the finisher. It's the final call, now your time is up. Game over, this the end of it. I am the finisher. Soon as you started, I finish it. Game over for the nonsense. I'm a reaper with the conflict. You've been pressing on the topic. I came to lock it up in the coffin. Yes! Got a score I wanna settle up. You ain't ready, I'ma let it rush. I ain't leaving nothing undone.
Hello everyone, and welcome to 2020. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, but I'll try to make it brief. First of all, hi. Hope you got on the hope you had a great holiday and a good new year. There's been a bunch of stuff happening, and which is like why you have not seen a webcomic relief in some time. Obviously, you know, it's Christmas. I dare say I'm gonna spend a little time on myself with the family, but that's only because I didn't know what was going to happen with my computer. So at the start of this, well, at the middle of this month, a few days ago, my computer died, and that sucked. Luckily, we got it fixed at the computer shop. It was a little pricey, but you know, it is what it is. And before, during that, I put up a GoFundMe, and I figured maybe, raise a little bit of money. Every little thing helps. And this was all, to help me get a new computer, because I can tell the old girl is getting old. Like, she needs an update. What I didn't expect was that we were going to reach 100% of the goal in less than a day. In less than 5 hours, actually. Which was fucking insane. Huge, insane shout out to all of you lovely people. I never expected this kind of thing to blow up like this. I am so humbled. I'm so thankful. I can't thank you guys enough. I just hope that with the new computer I'll be able to give you even better content, and I will be throwing up some videos on this channel just, so you guys are in the loop with what's going on with that computer, because I want, to be 100% transparent. So look forward to that. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about. Oh, actually, hold on. There is one more thing. On Saturday, the 25th of January, we will be doing another stream where we will be covering more of Tales Gets Trolled. So do drop by and see the bullshit that is about to unfold. So with that, let's get into the Patreons. Luke McKay. You should all know Luke McKay as the talented creator behind Boss to Dead that we already covered on this show. Luke also does a comic for DnD Beyond that updates every Monday on the DnD Beyond Twitter and Facebook. If any of you are playing D&D, you know D&D Beyond is like the shit. And Luke McKay's comic is equally amount of the shit. So by all means, go check it out. Nicholas Knudson. Nicholas wants me to push the YouTube channel called FishStickOnAStick. It's a channel that does roast reviews and readings of Creepypasta. So it's basically what you get when you mix Nightmine and the Webcomic Relief together. Just like this episode. So check it out! Amocin. We all know how I feel about Blizzard's writing, but Amocin here just goes to show you could easily salvage the World of Warcraft story if you just try. Druids is an adult fantasy comic in the World of Warcraft, so check it out if that sounds like it's right up your alley. Rojaru. Rojaru wants me to push his friend Sequeasley, who is currently living in Japan but is raising money to move to America. They normally sell animal pins, stickers of their designs, and will open for commission soon. The link for this will be in the description. Hugo Junstrand. If you don't already know, you should know that Hugo Junstrand is the amazingly talented artist that does my title cards, and if you want to see more of his stuff and celebrate him crossing into 10,000 subscribers, go and check out his animated covers on his YouTube channel. The links are in the description. I'm a Moron. I'm a Moron wants me to push, well, me, and he says, I want to promote the Webcomic Relief by Riser. If you become a patron right now, you can type first like me in the comments and join the cool type first club like me. So thanks for that. Lead Days. Lead Days, or rather Caesar, doesn't want me to push anything. He's just an awesome dude. Tired Programmer. Tired Programmer didn't get back to me about what they wanted me to push, so I'm just gonna push their webcomic Cyber Scrapyard. Cyber Scrapyard seems to be a mature action thriller comic about two characters finding out what has happened to their world. If you want to find out more, the link is in the description. The Bonsai. Bonsai doesn't want me to push anything this time, he just wants me to say, and I quote, just tell the fam you rock or something. Thanks man, much appreciated. Nana Newcomb. Nana is working on a webcomic called 6 Months, which is a romantic comic about a detective who falls in love with the superhero of the city. If you have been paying attention, you'll know Nana has been a long-time supporter of the Webcomic Relief, and my god can you tell she's improved. So please, go and check it out. And also just a huge shout out to Sebastian Benborg, Nina Ha, Graham Herring, Loriakun, Hitori the Artist, Why Not Warrior, Cage Vaffiel, Shiv, and Draker of Adrian. And also a huge shout out to all the lovely people that you see right here. If you want to support the show, there's actually a few different things you can do. You can either go to TeePublic and get your hands on some of the new Webcomic Relief merch with some really crisp designs designed by me and other people in the community. You can also support me on Patreon by donating anything you want every month, and you'll get a ton of rewards for it, such as the ability to see the video a day earlier, or get to watch the archived videos of me working on each individual video. If you want to support the show but don't really want to throw any money at it, that's perfectly fair. Then, at least, let me know what you thought about the video in the comment section. Like the video and subscribe to the channel and share the videos with your friends. I'll see you guys at the next Webcomic Relief. Take care.